Hello, this is Tim Wotton. That is Cotton with a W. Welcome to the Gift podcast, which each week focuses on the power of the mind, mindfulness, and being more present to overcome life and health challenges. And this has been shown to bring more resilience, calm, and joy, everything we would want. I am thoroughly delighted to have Rita Hausken as my guest today. Rita is a strategist and leadership coach, the founder of She Sustainability, come back to that one, who is supporting women who want to create more influence in male-dominated industries. One example would be oil and gas. She also helps organizations attract and retain female leaders by leveraging their visions and to embrace a new way of thinking. She is also the mother of Benjamin, who suffers from Hurley syndrome. He's cheated death on a regular basis for 25 years. For her, the word impossible actually is broken up into meaning I'm possible. If you can't change it, embrace it to make a difference is how she sees life. She considers herself a citizen of the world, but is born in Norway and lives in Stavanger. I got it right. Welcome to the show, Rita.
Thanks, Tim. I'm so delighted to be here.
I'm going to reverse engineer these questions and start with some ones that people often finish with. But what might be 3 words that best summarizes you?
Oh, okay. I would say that I am super determined and extremely curious.
Okay.
And what I've realized from what people are telling me is that I am very inspiring. So I would say determined, curious, and inspiring. These are the determination of who I am.
Wow, they're 3 strong words.
Yeah.
I know you live up to them, and so and the listeners will hear all about this. What might be something that very few people realize about you?
I think I've actually never really shared this with anyone except for maybe in a very close community. And I spoke about this yesterday. I think one thing that people don't know about me is that I make a choice to sit with pain. I make a choice to sit with my lowest emotion and feelings instead of trying to jump into higher emotions. And some people would say, well, why on the planet would you do that when you have so much kind of tragedy going on in your life and there's a lot of hardship? Well, I've come to realize that by sitting in my feeling of sadness or grief or pain, and then use my core value, which is curiosity, and I actually kind of see where I'm coming from, I prevent this emotion to stick around for too long. So to give an example of that is that when I lost my dad, I was very tempted to dive into work and just like distract myself. And I did the absolute opposite. I spent time in my grieving and wrote a lot in my journal about how I physically felt, what thoughts came up, what regrets came up. So I really use that as an opportunity. So that is something that I would say the majority of people, I don't even think I've mentioned this to my mom, that I actually sit in uncomfortable situations and dissect them and using curiosity.
Yeah, you embrace the difficult emotions.
Yeah.
And know that if you rush through, it will come back and haunt you later.
No, yeah, it does.
Yeah. I probably had a very similar way of dealing with my father's death, actually, 7 years ago. So I can understand. I really wanted to immerse myself in enough amount of grief, not too much, but enough that I felt there was a lot of closure, and the love was still there, and I wasn't missing him. I was just glad that we had a relationship, and that's
Yeah.
quite a powerful mindset.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I think what really stands out is that we do actually have a choice of how we do things. And I think choose to grieve, when you actually make a conscious decision, I'm going to grieve, it doesn't become overwhelming. It actually becomes just the right portion of grieving.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now we're going to talk about your lovely son Benjamin soon, but
Mm.
was there anything you've learnt from either a life or career setback outside of you know, dealing with your son's illness? Is there something that's happened that also you've learnt a lot from?
Yeah, I think actually one thing that I've really learned a lot from was during a rough period when I was working in the corporate world. I was a director for 20 years in the media. And this was in the beginning of the last energy crisis, so back in 2014 or 13. We started in kind of 13, moved into 14. I found myself actually playing myself mediocre. I I started to embrace everyone else's ideas of how to solve certain things, and I find myself living outside my core values. And some of my core values are like, it's connection, it's freedom of speech, and it's curiosity. And what happened to me was that i I kind of listened to what the other leaders were saying, and I was pushing myself up, become smaller. I didn't express my true emotions and what I felt about the situation. And that I believe that it was the absolutely opposite thing that would be the remedy for to solve the situation within the company. What happened to me as a result was that I became a horrible person.
Oh, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, not believe me, not me either. I mean, it's like, but I'm looking back to it. I was, instead of freely speaking of where I was coming from, I just was like a pressure cooker that suddenly would burst out. I would argue, but not about my true beliefs, but just as a reaction to a situation. And my big takeaway from that is that embarking on a journey outside your core values and not being authentic can lead you into a carrying a personality that isn't you and is not constructive. It doesn't help you. So that was my big takeaway. So anything I do today is to ensure that I live according to my core values. And it was a big lesson. Luckily, it didn't last very long. It lasted
Okay, good.
maybe a year,
Long enough.
and long enough to see that this is not me. And I started to reel myself back in, and I started to focus on my team and the connection and the human side, more on the strategic thinking of, and planning. And that saved me, and I became the nice person I think I am again.
Well, and we have, just for listeners, we know each other. We've met only the once in London,
Yeah.
but we'd spoken before, and we'd always got on, hadn't we?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so the person you've just portrayed, yeah, it is amazing how one can drift away from one's core identity, and it's all too easy. And so I'm not
Yes.
being in any way judgmental because it can easily
Mm.
happen.
Mm.
But at least you caught yourself.
Yes, I did. I didn't like who I was becoming.
Yeah, and I bet people acted to you in a different way than you were used to or wanted them to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It was not a good place to be in. So being authentic, and I think also one of my big lessons was that uh, other people doesn't necessarily know everything. So why did I give my power away to say that, well, of course so and so would know more than me because maybe they are more senior in their title, or
Yeah.
I think that is one of my big takeaways, is I bring as much to the table as anyone else, and my voice is extremely important. which is something that I saw in my teams as well. It didn't matter if it was the most recent hire or the person been there longest. Everyone bring a color to the table that we really need to listen to. We'll sit with parts of the truth.
Now, explain how your life did change with the birth of your son, Benjamin.
Wow. Well, that was a big change.
Because it changes anyway when you become a mum.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
More so for the mum than the father, because they're genetically hardwired to that child because they carried them in most cases. And so already they're just, every fiber of their body is hardwired to that child. But then with the diagnosis of Hurler's syndrome, you know, please explain just the transformation that went on in you and the journey you've been on. I know it's a long story, that one, but and I've read quite a bit of what you've shared, and it's very powerful stuff.
So I actually just need to start with the beginning, because I mean, Benjamin is my only child, so I didn't know what it would mean to have a normal child. So it you know, just a couple of weeks after giving birth, I kind of realized something was wrong, but not wrong in the sense that I thought, oh, something's wrong with Benjamin. Like, no, I mean, he was just screaming all the time. I mean, he was crying and crying and crying. And it started off that he had like an umbilical hernia, well, first another hernia and then an umbilical hernia. And everything that showed up was always kind of fixable. It was like, oh, he's got that, so we got to fix that. Oh, we got that, we're going to fix that. But nobody kind of looked at it like, maybe there's something generally wrong here. So for the first year, he was hospitalized 13 times with pneumonia, and through which, when he was 6 months, he almost died of something called Clostridium, where I had to use some of my instincts and insights to find medicine for him, which was very kind of weird kind of treatment. So I very quickly realized that becoming a mother was full-time work, in the sense of worry, concern. I remember my mom said, do you need any help? You know, I was in hospital. And, do you need any help when you come home? And it was like, Mom, hello, I'm not the first one getting a baby. I came home one night. I called my mom. I need help. I need help. I don't know what to do. I just felt this insecurity. So my mom was there all the time helping me out. And so with Benjamin, for 2 years, he cried. Well, imagine, in 24 hours, he would sleep maximum 20 minutes in one go. He would wake up, he would cry, and I'd fall asleep. He could never sleep in a normal position. So I remember when we experienced that he was a bit flat on his head, one of the doctors said, oh, don't worry, you know, kids, he's probably been sleeping too much on his, laying down on his head. And I was like, excuse me, my son is constantly being in front of me, being hips, because he don't sleep. So a lot of things were just different, but I never thought that there was something wrong. I just thought that there are just a lot of things going on right now. So there was no kind of deeper instinct saying, maybe you should check up on something. It wasn't until he was about 18 months and I was so exhausted of all this. I asked the doctor at the hospital, I said, we need to find something, because I need to get him in a special daycare.
Yeah.
And I need that to happen right now. Find anything. I diagnosed. There must be something wrong with him. But I never thought there was. And of course, it turned out that he had a Hurley syndrome. And Hurley syndrome, so he was diagnosed then 23 years ago, and Hurley syndrome was, at the time, there was no treatment at all. It was just to prepare for death. So again, what changed in my life was, first, as for any mother, is that of course you're very protective of your child, but I realized that I had to really stand up for my child and fight for my child. and challenge status quo with doctors and nurses and institutions who, again, claim to know it all and to have all the answers. And the answers they had was that there is nothing to do, just stay home, quit your job, and wait for him to die. So my journey in becoming a mother was a kind of a brutal awakening, but then it was also a fantastic awakening of how much power there is in becoming a mother, and how willing you are to fight for what you believe in, regardless what the world is telling you. It's like, yeah, I hear you telling me that whatever is impossible, but it's like water on a goose. I didn't feel personally attacked when they said all these kind of weird things. I just felt like, okay, that's sort of their opinions of mine. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, explain what Hurley syndrome is, just for those that hadn't heard of it.
Yes, so Hurley syndrome is a genetic disorder, and it's a genetic disorder that usually comes in families. If you can see that there is a close relationship in the family, somewhere down the line. The interesting thing is that with Bijan, so Benjamin's dad, and me, Bijan is from Iran and I'm from Norway, so we had no kind of relation like through family, at least what we know about. But so there seems to be like a cloning, but it is a genetic disorder. It's very, very rare. It's very rare, and there's a high risk of getting several children with the same disorder.
Yeah.
So we chose to have only one. It's like a storage disorder. It means that when you're born, let me just explain it in a simple way. It's like if you take a can of paint and you remove the top and you feel the paint is soft. And as long as the top is off, the turpentine starts to evaporate from the paint, and the paint becomes stiff or harder and harder. The same goes for a child with Hurley. When they're born, is that they're okay until they're born, and then it's kind of this what is needed to remove the mucose in the body. So they need the turpentine to kind of keep this going, this enzyme. It's not there anymore. So the paint is just becoming hard. So around Benjamin's cells, the mucose is just surrounding each cell, slowly but surely growing. So the cells will just glue together, which then will lead to everything. Your hair is thick, your tongue, you get what we call the elephant skin. Your kidney and spleen and liver, everything is exhausted. So if you don't die of heart failure, you die because you suffocate, because everything is too big.
Yeah.
So that is the only thing I can explain it with. So it's like you miss the turpentine or whatever you call it in the paint, and then in the end it's too stiff and you die.
Okay. Now, what would be? I imagine there's many hard things about being a mother to such a sick child, but could you pinpoint one in particular that feels like the hardest?
Yes, it is the constant worry that today is the last day. It is that it's this feeling of losing power. Even you have a lot of power, you lose the power, and every day is waking up, and if you sneeze, I think it's today the last day. Usually he gets sick around Easter in particular, so every Easter is really hard. So I would say that is definitely the hardest part of it. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be up there for most people, isn't it? As
Mm.
that daily reality.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
brutal, and
yeah.
it shows up. It shows up on a regular basis. So I have all these emergency plans and constant. I mean, I had a personally designed specialist team for him with 9 doctors and constantly in dialogue. And so just to ensure that I know that the day it happens, I know that I have done everything. But that is also scary because I never feel like I can really let complete go of everything.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, how have you personally improved the outlook for Benjamin and for other children with the Hurler syndrome?
Mm. So, because I mean, in the intro, you said that I'm a person that says impossible equals I'm possible,
Mm.
and I think that is where I made the biggest difference. Is that when Benjamin was diagnosed, there were no treatment at all. I realized that I could shift my focus from why is this happening to me, and I realized, well, I can't change the diagnosis, so then why is this happening for me? What is it that I have been given now to do that can impact the situation? And through my strong belief that as long as there is life, there is hope, I just went out there. I put on all the inspiration I had, and all the curiosity I had, and I actually decided to not to work with Norwegian authorities, because Norway, excuse for any Norwegians listening in, is that we have a society which is like, if it's not fixed in Norway, you can't fix it, because everything, we're amongst the blessed nations. So I decided to turn to nations that are used to having to do their own homework, like raising money. So I turned to the US, the UK, and Australia. And so I found resources in the US that was hidden even for the US. And this was a young doctor who was going to take his PhD, and this was at UCLA, and he saw that there is a possibility to find a treatment for Hurley syndrome through an enzyme replacement therapy, but it would take 20 years. But for me, because he said that there is a possibility, I betted everything on that, and I started to communicate that there is somebody working on this.
Mm.
There is possible solutions. I never thought there would be a solution for Benjamin, but I just knew that we needed to hone in on that. There are some guy out there that believe that there is a solution, and I had been given the task to inspire other people to know about that. So I started to talk about it. I spoke to all like nurses and hospital and kindergartens, and I started to connect with other families around the world. I just started to really connect, and I became kind of a voice for this. And as a result of that, of course, other families were starting to do the same. I attended a lot of medical conferences. Actually, what I did, I didn't say that I was a parent. I always managed somehow to become, I was like a professional. So I was with researchers, and I was with doctors
Yeah.
and scientists. And in this environment, I got to understand how their thinking was. And I met one doctor, a woman, and I asked her this question: so would you use enzyme replacement therapy if you had a child with Hurley syndrome? And she said, are you crazy? Of course I wouldn't. I mean, your child would be, or the child would become a vegetable anyway. Why would I do that with my child? And I thought, okay, she can't have any children. And then I used the same question to another one, and that was Dr. Ed Ray. And he said, who wouldn't do anything in their power for their child? With that, I knew that I had to put all my resources into believing and partner up with people believing in the cause. So Dr. Ed Ray in Manchester became one of my allies, the one that I really believed in. And as a result of that work, medicine was created. And as a result, Benjamin was He was actually the first in Europe who was on it as a paid model. And as a result of what we did for him, other rare disorders is now under treatment in Norway. And I have had doctors who said they realized one thing. One in particular, he said, Rita, I've realized one thing. I took my degree, I became a doctor to actually do something for people, not to look after the budget. So I rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And this is the thing he did. He just started treatments, because in Norway you can't just turn them off if you started with them, and then he would be fighting for whatever budget. So yes, as a result, there is medicine not only for Hurley's, but for I would say what I've done is to open the mentality with, at least in Norway, that let's try and figure things out. Let's open things. So a complete shift in mindset is the biggest thing that I feel that I have been contributing to. And I remember when I decided to get involved with the Norwegian Centers for Rare Disorders, it was because now I have something to contribute with.
Yeah.
So in the first meeting, I told the families, I told the personnel there that there is something going on out there. You need to know this. And there was different reactions. One reaction was a mother to 11-year-old daughter with the same syndrome, and she was on the verge of dying. And she said, why weren't we told that at least somebody believed that there's something to be done? Not that I think it would have saved my daughter,
yeah,
but just for the sake of it, just for the feeling that we are seeing in society. So that's the power of this.
Yeah. And your boy Benjamin, he turned 25 a couple of months ago.
Yes.
Which,
21st of October, 25. Oh, unbelievable.
I know,
Yeah.
and it's a landmark that you couldn't have imagined all those years back.
No, I couldn't. I remember actually. So one of the things that I did in order to go out there and make a difference in the world is that I took a quantum leap. So he was 2 years old. I took a quantum leap. I thought it was a quantum leap to see him as a 7-year-old, because that's when we were kind of thought, he's going to die when he's around 7 or max 12. Quantum leap into age 7. I looked the devil in the eye to see the awfulness, the cruelty of this illness and disorder. I dove into every awful article you can just imagine of how they die, to then reverse engineer the whole thing to say, how can I ensure that that doesn't happen? And then be fully present, completely present in the day, but with the knowledge of kind of the future prediction. Did I ever imagine that he would be 25? Never, ever. And to mention that, I remember when he had turned 14, there was this social worker, beautiful woman. She said to me, have you thought about getting kind of Benjamin into a, not daycare, but like overnight care center to, so you can relax a bit? And I remember I turned a bit angry, like, excuse me, my son can die anytime. Am I going to give him away to someone? And she looks at me and she said, excuse me, Rita, are you telling me that your son is going to be a victim of some diagnosis? He's not going to live his life. He's not going to be out with other people. He's going to hang around mum and dad for the rest of his life. And I'd never seen it from that angle before. And of course, I said, of course. And then she said, so what about when he grows old? Should he have his own apartment? And I was like, okay, now we're really far-fetched here. But she said, remember, Rita, we have to think about life that he's going to live. And even if he doesn't, the fact that you have put his name down on a flat, a possible apartment, that means that somebody else would get that apartment, because the society needs to know that there is a big need for these accommodations. And now he's 25, and now he can have his own flat if we wanted to.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yes.
And I can just imagine the transformation in you as a person. I don't know you before Benjamin, but it's obviously a transformation across all parts of your life. And was that one of the reasons why you wanted to do more to help females in business?
Yes. So one of the the reason for working on, partnering with women was that during my years with Benjamin, I have been a source of new invention in the medical world. I have no medical background. I mean, seriously, I think the closest I ever came to any medical stuff was maybe playing doctor when I was young, and actually pretending to be a psychologist when I was very young. That is the closest I've ever been to that world. But what I realized was that faced with challenges with Benjamin, I was willing to raise my voice and say, hey, why don't we try this? Even how ridiculous that solution would sound. And through these things, I have then been behind inventions that the world hadn't seen. And again, we see thousands of people actually benefiting from these solutions. It came to me that one of the biggest hurdles as women is that we don't speak up. We have this tendency of thinking that if that was such a great idea, it would already exist. So don't make a fool out of yourself. Just keep that low. Of course, it happens with men as well as women. I just know that women hold back quite a lot on that. When I had my career in the oil and gas industry, I was also I questioned why I didn't see more women around the decision-making table. I questioned that. When I decided to take the big leap a few years ago, I knew that I had outgrown my mission to work with corporations. I had a bigger task at hand, and that was to ensure that the ideas, the vision of women is presented around the table. I just knew it, and I'm so passionate about that because there's so many solutions hidden in these brilliant minds, and we need access to that. So that's why I said, yes, I need to be part of that and work with women to facilitate their insight.
And how have you surprised yourself over the last decade?
I think actually taking that big leap to actually decide on leaving a highly paid corporate job, being the sole breadwinner in the family, to just believe in me, that I can create anything I want in my life and make the money that I need to do whatever I need to do and want to do in my life. That is in the beginning of the decade of 2010, if anyone had told me that, Rita, you were going to do this, I would have said, are you crazy? Are you crazy? That is by far the biggest surprise in my own life the past 10 years.
And one that you've backed up and gone from strength to strength, both in your own knowledge, but also how you've helped others, which must feel more profound and important than anything you may have done before work-wise.
Ever. ever, ever, ever. I always say that I feel I'm not the person that is on stage. I feel I'm the partnering person off stage, supporting the woman in particular who's on stage, and allowing her to really shine. And when I see a woman who comes to me and feel that I've lost, I mean, these can be very senior women. They come to me and say, I've lost all confidence. I have no self-esteem anymore. It can be due to an experience in a meeting. It can be a lot of things, but they come to me and we are starting to really map them out. And one thing I always say first is that we need to quickly get to understand that you are bigger than your corporation and you're bigger than your title. We are going to map out your unique abilities and your powers. And we're going to figure this out. And I believe in every single woman or man that comes to me and sits in front of me. And then when I see that transformation, and I receive testimonials, I receive letters, I receive just right now, I've received feedback of how they have experienced this transformation. It's just so rewarding. There's nothing in the world that can be more rewarding than knowing that you're helping another person to living fully expressed and liberated, I would say.
Yeah, and you do that very well, and I've seen you on stage. And I work with a lot of females in oil and gas, and the sum of the parts in an organization is stronger with both actually understanding how they get the best out of each other.
Yeah.
So well done on all you're doing and continue to do.
Thank you.
Because the GIFT podcast can be a lot of things, but it really does, for me, hone in on the power of the mind. What would you say you've learned about the power of your mind? Maybe there's one really salient thing that you always revert back to, or is you feel it's an ongoing journey, for want of a better word?
Well, it's definitely an ongoing journey. I mean, every day I wake up and I realize I've learned something new every single day. But I think if I should go back on, let's say, one thing I've learned about really the power of the mind is mind your language. That when we say, I can't do that, it means that we are giving our powers away to somebody else. And it's so much better to say, I won't do that. Instead of, oh, I can't go to the gym because I haven't got the time. Well, let's be real and say you won't do it because you choose to do something else. And it feels so much better when we are feeling that we can choose. So the power of the mind for me is actually the power of language and how I communicate with myself. Which is in one way going back to, let's say, the diagnosis with Benjamin is like, it's easy and it's so understandable in the world that you are a victim. It happens to you. And it does happen to us. It's not a kind of doubt about that. We're not selecting these things to come. But the fact is that from now on, it's up to me how we're going to deal with this. So the power of the mind then is, how is it happening for me? What is it that I'm being given in this world? So I think the biggest power is that you can be the victim or you can be the creator. It's your choice. So the power of the mind is it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I also think one of the things I just want to say is that I think society has, unfortunately, it pushed us into think that we constantly need external validation. We need external learning. You know, you need a PhD, you need a master, you need whatever. Where we reach a point where the fact is that what we need is mastery of self-awareness. We need to embark on a journey and understand that in our DNA, there are like 1,000 books of information in each DNA. Why don't we tap into our knowledge that we have gained from birth till now and understand that we can sometimes sit in that silence and find it? So that's what I invite people to do, is to, spend some time with yourself and be mindful of yourself.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said that all our wisdom we ever need is inside us. We
Mm,
just need to be still for long enough
mm,
to actually reach for it, and be able to listen to it when it comes.
mm,
And that neatly leads me on to another part of the gift that I'm a huge fan of, which is being more
mm.
present, being in the moment, those fabled words, in the moment.
Yeah.
And how do you go about achieving that, Rita? And how does it help you?
Oh, love that question. So, actually, since I was 14 years old, I have been practicing this, but I didn't realize that I was practicing it until like maybe 10 years ago. And that is journaling. Um, I've been this notorious person that have a notebook next to me. And the first thing I do in the morning is to grab it and just write down whatever comes to mind. I've always done that.
Mm,
And for me, to take, I always say, take the sovereignty back in my life, especially in the morning. I don't allow anything to interfere with my life. No books, no Facebook, no nothing. I have my notebook and I start just writing things down. Then I am in control. I am creating my day. So there is Marie Forleo. She says, "Create before you consume," and that's what I do. I create
mm.
before I consume. So I journaling is a wonderful way of being mindful. And I would say the latest invention I've got now is something called Remarkable. It is a digital writing thing that actually has replaced all my journals. So if I still handwrite, I need to do that.
I think
That's
I've
what I
seen the
do.
adverts for Remarkable.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Um, Now, you did talk about, it's very, very poignant comment about what you think is important. And before we started recording, you and I had a quick chat about the amount of friends or acquaintances we would ever meet who would spend a lot of time worrying about stuff that never actually comes to fruition, never happens, because in their own minds, they're being active in their worry. Whereas, as useful as it can be to to have that fight or flight desire,
Mm,
actually, if you can use presence and mindfulness, it does eradicate a lot of worry, and that worry builds up and isn't actually terribly useful to your body at all.
mm,
So
mm,
it's counterintuitive for people that they think they're being proactive and helping themselves by worrying over a situation.
mm.
Whereas actually, if you can learn to square it off and
Yeah.
just accept and then adapt,
Mm.
that is actually more likely to cause you or bring you more peace and resilience quicker than, worrying through every single detail of something that actually then never turns out it will ever happen.
Yeah. That is so true. There was one who said that of all the worry he had had in his life, very few came through. And I think there was for me a golden rule into worry. It is either we worry about something that we can take action on and actually do something about, or we're worrying about something that is beyond our control. So drop it. Really drop it. It's like I have a lot of people that are preparing for meetings. And what I've realized is that they're preparing more to think about, in case so and so say so and so, then I say so and so, instead of preparing more on what is it that you want to say, what is important to you, because you don't know what other people will say anyway.
Yeah.
And I would say the only reason worry is good is like when I said I took a quantum leap into Benjamin's 7 years, was because I was going to look for something I could do. If there was nothing, then there's nothing. Don't do anything. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Just leave it behind.
Yeah. I made a natural progression into not using the word worry so much. Just actually, I have concerns, but
Yes.
they seem to be more manageable than a debt of worry
Yeah.
that weighs me
Yes.
down. Um,
The word worry is horrible.
um, Now, a question I ask every every guest.
Yeah.
What might be one book that you've read that you go back to, or maybe you just read it once and that was just enough because it spoke to you so well? What book might that be?
Oh, that's such a difficult question. Ooh,
Because
as a
you're so curious, I can
consumer,
imagine you're well read. So to choose one book might be tricky.
yes. So there is, I would say, there is maybe one book um, that has uh, changed my life, and that is The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, which is actually talking about the six steps to basically take a sovereignty back in your life in the morning. It's actually how you wake up in the morning and design your day. That is a book that I invite all my clients to read.
Okay.
So if I can only mention one book, okay, I gotta leave it with that.
And the name of the title again was
The Miracle Morning
The Miracle Morning.
by Hal Elrod.
Thank you. What might be one day, if you could turn back time, you'd like to go back to, and why?
One day. I think that one day is the one day that I use as my visualization tool to bring up um, my happy hormones like serotonin, and that is I'm on skis. I'm in the mountain in Norway. I'm on the slope, and I remember it's not really sunny. It's kind of half overcast, and I can see I'm on my skis, and I'm just like going down the slopes, and the pine wood trees are similar to pine wood on the side, and it's just this feeling of complete freedom, liberated. I'm fully expressed in the physical. Um, Strangely enough, that is the day that I go back to every day. That I visualize
Okay.
to kick myself into gear. It's not this when Benjamin woke up from 3 months in coma. No, powerful, amazing, but in one way I want to kind of put that on the side. For me, when you ask a question, it's really about one day that stands out, that gives me every feeling of joy, and that is very powerful for me.
Thank you. Now, the podcast is called The Gift. Now, if you were to unwrap a gift for listeners in the form of your own advice or a quote, what might that be?
Again, I'm going to refer to Marie Forleo. I love her stuff, and that is that everything is figure outable. You can figure out anything if you put your mind to it. Just make that decision. I'm going to figure it out, and you'll figure it out. So I would like to quote Marie Forleo on that one.
Good stuff, and I can concur with that sentiment.
Yes.
Now, if listeners
Me too.
if listeners wanted to contact you, Rita, and I encourage them to, how would they go about that?
Yes. So so they can either find me on my website, which is ritahausken.com. Okay, www.ritahausken.com. Easiest way is actually the platform that I use every single day, and that is on LinkedIn. So just type in Rita Hausken, Hausken, and you'll find me there. And connect with me. I love being connected, and I'll reply to any connection that comes my way. And even if there's just a question, I just love hearing what's going on. So I would love to hear from anyone.
Great, and I'd encourage people to contact you because
Thank you.
You've helped many. You've helped yourself, and you're helping the world be a lot better place than when you found it. And then that's something that very few people can ever say. So thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
being a guest on my show. I've got a feeling may get you back on. Actually, we only tapped only a small amount of your knowledge and wisdom.
That would be my pleasure.
So thank you, Rita, and thank you for those listening. Do tell others. That's the power of the power of hearing from your good friends about a podcast that you rate. So please do that. And if you want to find out more about me, Tim Wotton, you can contact me via most social media platforms and or my website, timwotton.com. Thanks very much for listening. I leave you as I always do, yours cup half full. Thank you. Bye.